Hey, how's your week going so far? Could you use just a little bit of refresh this middle of the week? Hey, I could too. Stick around. This is Midweek Refresh. Well, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time you happen to be pausing and joining me, I'm glad that you've decided to take a little bit of a break and a breather on what's been a very stressful and difficult week for a lot of us, just dealing with what's going on kind of across our world. This week I started kind of a new personal study on the Gospel of John, and I think it was Tuesday evening. It was after the presidential debates. I got on and gave a little bit of a kind of an impromptu video talking about why I love the Gospel of John. And if you missed it, I would encourage you, it's on my Facebook page, to go check that out. Basically, I talked about how I love this Gospel because it talks about belief, how we should believe in Jesus, the Word, the Logos that is mentioned in John, very famously in John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. Jesus is eternal. Jesus didn't just show up on earth on Christmas 2,000 years ago. He was with God in creation. You see in Genesis chapter 1 that God had company. It wasn't just God. There's the plural. Let us make man in our image. It's a plural form of creation. But as I was looking through John chapter 1, the rest of this chapter, and over the next few weeks of this video podcast, we're going to be kind of looking through the Gospel of John somewhat. I love this book. But as I was reading through it and studying it this week and watching one of my old professors, Kenny Bowles from Ozark Christian College, on Ozark's Next Level videos on their website, watching some other videos on Right Now Media, I just kind of got a different glimpse of John maybe than I have before. Now, I've studied this book before. I've preached chunks out of this book before. I've taught this book in classes before. But a few things that really just jumped out to me this week as I was reading back through this again. And I just want to share those with you, kind of as the theme for today, as we pause to refresh and just kind of rest in God's presence. As we were reading through John chapter 1, again, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. I love verses 4 and 5. Here's what they say, verse 4. It says, in him, that's talking about Jesus, was life. And the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I don't know if you've gotten to a point where maybe you feel like you're just surrounded by darkness. I don't mean maybe like spiritual darkness or literal darkness, but just confusion. Like, I mean, have you been there? Like, you're just not really sure what to do next. And it says very clearly, Jesus is the light. Now, I think sometimes there's this idea that there's this battle of light and dark that goes on in our lives. And maybe it's kind of that proverbial angel on one shoulder, demon on another shoulder, or devil on the other shoulder who, hey, you should do this. No, you know better. Don't do that. I don't mean that. I mean, it's like you just don't necessarily know which way to go, what to do. But here's the good thing about light and dark. There's no actual battle between light and dark. The only way the darkness wins is if the light doesn't show up. Think about this. If you've walked into a dark room and you turn on the light, is there like some battle? No, you hit the switch and like that, the darkness goes away. Now, I guess like the one exception might be if you're in like one of those old basketball gyms, where you turn the lights on and it takes them like 4 minutes to light up, like just kind of slowly, and there's that buzz. You know what I'm talking about? But even still, the light may not be strong, but it's on. And the light just takes the darkness completely away. The only way the darkness can succeed is when the light is completely extinguished. Now, maybe the light doesn't go as far into the future as you want it to, and that's okay. It says in Psalm 119 that the Word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. It doesn't illuminate everything miles and miles down the road, but it's going to show us our next step. It's going to show us what to do next. So the Word, the Logos, which I mentioned this on my little video Tuesday, had a dual meaning. To the Greeks, it kind of meant like this logical thing that holds the universe together. And to the Jews in the Old Testament, it would have meant the Word of God. And so we put that together, meaning the Word of God holds the universe together. That's how the first century readers would have read John 1, verse 1. That word is the light in the darkness. But as we go on down through this, here's some other verses that really jumped out to me. Verse 14 very famously says, "The Word, the Logos, became flesh and dwelt among us. We've seen his glory, as of only the Son of the Father. Glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." And then it says John, talking about John the Baptist, bore witness about him and cried out, "This is he of whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me because he was before me." John's immediate response to Jesus is worship. He mentions who he is. And folks, this is what we should be doing too. God has come to us, and our immediate response to that should be worship. We look down through this chapter, and we see some instances with John the Baptist, pointing out Jesus as being the Messiah. But what gets me is the latter part of chapter 1. Jesus starts calling his disciples. And in verse 40, John the Baptist is speaking about Jesus, and it says, "One of the two who heard John speak and followed was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother." And it says, when he found out, he first found his own brother Simon, which is Peter, and he said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. In other words, his first reaction and response to finding out who Jesus was to go tell people about Jesus. And then in verse 43, it goes on down. Jesus found Philip, and he said, "Follow me." And Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." In other words, Philip's first reaction and response was to go tell people about Jesus. And I love that, because that should be our first response too. That light comes into our darkness and lights it up. And our first response should be to go share that light with everybody else. This has been a difficult week. I know that. And I don't want to get into the details of it. That's not what my time on this podcast is about. You can go look on Facebook and Twitter and see all that you want to see. You're not going to get it here. But the reality of the situation is we have had a difficult week where we've stared into some darkness. And Jesus is that light for us. The light that when it comes on, the darkness is going to go away. Here's what I love about Jesus. Both of these little instances I gave you in verse 40, 41, and 43 through 45, where somebody finds out about Jesus and immediately goes and shares it. Look how these are followed up. Verse 42, Andrew has just gone and told Peter, or Simon, about Jesus. In verse 43, it says he brought him, that's talking about Andrew bringing Simon, to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. And you drop on down to verse 46, where Nathanael has just been told by Philip about Jesus. Nathanael says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" There's a story there. Nazareth was kind of a backwater town. Nobody of significance ever came from Nazareth. And Philip says, "Come and see." Verse 47, Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" And Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Now what's wrapped up in those two little stories there? First off, before you come to Jesus, and before you know Jesus, Jesus knows you. And Jesus knows about you. Jesus already knows who you are because you're his child. He went to the cross for you. That light came into the darkness and went to the cross for you, and then died a criminal's death, and then defeated death by walking out of the grave. The darkness was defeated by the light. My papa, my dad's dad, served in the army during the Korean War era. He was stationed in Alaska, and he told us a story about serving in Alaska, and in the winter in Alaska, how it was just pitch black, for miles and miles and miles. And he said that his commanding officers taught them about being careful when you're in complete darkness like that, not to shine any light because you might give your position away. And as an example, he had somebody like 2 miles off light up a cigarette, and when he flicked his lighter, you could see that little tiny half-inch tall flame on a lighter from like a mile or two away. That's how light defeats the darkness. That's how powerful the light is. The slightest little bit of light instantly kills the darkness. So here's a question for you this week. When you're facing darkness in your life this week, when you're facing uncertainty, are you going to turn to the light? Are you going to turn to the true light? Because that's what we see with these instances here. These men, Andrew and then Philip, they saw the light and they grabbed a hold of the light, and then they couldn't help but share the light with others. Hey, this week I want to encourage you, find the light, grab a hold of the light, and then share that light with everybody else you see. Have a great week.